Praise Jesus this Sunday morning.
Hallelujah.
I welcome us to church. Today is the 14th day of March 2021. Today I just want to remind us of something. It's a reminder. There's this account of a family. Is this account of a family with domestic assistants. The first child in that family happens to be a boy. He has 3 other siblings. The last one is also a boy with 2 girls in the middle. They have these domestic assistants, what you call house help, including drivers and the rest, because their parents were well-to-do. And the issue of being the heir to the family didn't just get into the head of the first boy, who is in secondary school, what you call high school, in other place around the globe. He became his head. He was very rude to the domestic assistant. He will insult the driver that takes him to school. Their school is not too far away from the house. It's a trackable distance if you are not from such a home as a child or as a student. He will make the domestic servant who serve him to stand until he finish eating. And these are elderly women, some of them. Some of them, their children are even older than this boy. A boy of about 15 years old. The father watched with dismay how his son was treating the domestic assistants. The boy will always remind them that he was the heir and that he was the head of the family. Then one day, the father had to remind him and everyone else who was actually in charge. That day, the father just came unexpectedly and summoned all the staff, the domestic staff, along with the children. He said he needed to make something very straight. The people need to know who to respect in case whether he's around or he's not around. And the boy was smiling. That finally the father will have to make his authority very known to everyone. And then the father dropped the reminder. When you set alarm in your phone, usually it's a pleasant thing. It's a good reminder. But not all reminders are good. Some reminders leave wreckage in their wake, in their trail. Right there and then, the father reminded everyone that he was the one in charge and stripped the boy of every authority he had over any of the domestic staff. No driver would take him to school. He would trek. He would not even give him pocket money. No domestic staff will serve him. he will serve himself and wash his dishes by himself. They continued to serve his siblings. And the father said, you will do this until you learn how to respect people. So the time frame was up to the son. If he was going to be the son who is a domestic servant for all his life, or he will cut short his time. That wasn't a good reminder. It was a painful reminder. Sometimes God reminds us, but when he does, bad things happen. Today I want to remind us that the earth is the Lord's. It is capital letter Lord. And that's the word Jehovah, Yahweh, the self-existing one. Sometimes we misconstrue the scripture because we forget the first part. That says heaven is his throne, the earth is his footstool, and he has given the earth to the children of man. The person who gives something to you is still in charge. Sometimes employers have to remind their employee who is in charge when they give them a sack letter. Sometimes disciplined parents need to remind their erring children who is in charge by grounding them totally. No fun, no money, no entertainment, no music. You trek to school. No visitors. Those are reminders that are painful. It's not like the reminder we put in our phones or that gadget that tells us, oh, you are supposed to. Today is your anniversary. Oh, tomorrow is Titi Lion's birthday. There are reminders that make you smile, but there are reminders that are not so pleasant. I'm going to show us through scriptures who own the earth. And when we say the earth, some says the earth. What is the earth? It means every damn thing. As far as the eyes can see and can't see, the earth is the Lord's. Is that what the apostle said? Let me show you. The introduction, Psalm 24, verse 1. A psalm of David. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. You see that? The earth, the container. See the earth as a container. The world, see it as a system. And they that dwell therein. So if you live on earth, if you are within this geographical space called earth, you belong to him. Whether you are visible or invisible, you belong to him. Psalm 24 verse 1. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. In case you are wondering, it was specific, the world and all its inhabitants. Every creature, that's what he's saying. Visible to the eyes and or invisible to the eyes. They are the Lord's. Look at Genesis chapter 1 verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Last week we talked about the inventor and his invention. And we said God created marriage. The earth and the heaven, someone owns it. Throw away that jibbo-jabba nonsense of evolution. Darwin himself knew he made a stupid blunder on how existence came to be. In the beginning, God created. Before you create, there's a lot of thoughts. It's a carefully planned, strategically executed idea. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. A reminder this morning. Many times Christians do not remind themselves or who owns the earth. That's why some of us have become slaves to even children of the devil. We are looking for crumbs that falls from the table. That's why we have sold ourselves to the devil and the sons of men for our protection, for our livelihood, because we have forgotten who is in charge. The earth is the Lord's, because the earth was created by the same Lord. Every time I hear somebody says something like, "I will deal with you. When I finish dealing with you, you will know who I am. Nobody can save you from me," I shake my head. I'll give you examples of men who are much more powerful, who God had to remind who owns the earth. Every time he does that, something bad happens. I mean, something really, really bad happens. Colossians chapter 1, verse 16 and 17. It's just a reminder. Today's sermon is a reminder. Don't ever forget who is in charge. And if you belong to him, that's all the boost and the encouragement you need. It means your welfare and your warfare is taken care of. Your welfare and your warfare is taken care of. For by him were all things created that are in heaven. Is talking about Jesus. For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible. Did you see that? Visible and invisible. So why the hell will I submit myself to some stupid court who submit themselves to some stupid invisible power when that very invisible power was created by the Lord? It's not wisdom, it's foolishness. I don't deal with Korofo, I deal with the boss. Visible and invisible. He said, whether they be thrones. There are different kinds of thrones. There are traditional thrones. There are political thrones. There are spiritual thrones. There are social thrones. But he said, whether it doesn't matter. Whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers or things, all things were created by him. And for him, did you see that? You belong to him. You are his. If somebody want to use a raw term, he say your ass belong to him. He owns you. You are his. It doesn't matter the nomenclature by which you are called. It doesn't matter your title. It doesn't matter your office. You are his. You belong to him. He owns you. I mean, as in the word own, he owns you. You are like his employee. He can terminate your appointment anytime he pleases. He is the Supreme Court all by himself. He is the judiciary. He is the legislature and he is the executive all by himself. He does not confer or consult with anyone but himself. He said, it doesn't matter whether it be thrones. Doesn't matter whether it be powers, dominion. All things were created by him and for him. You belong to him. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. That's a very strong word. It means you don't exist without him. You can't exist without him. You can't be set up without him. So please don't offend him. Do not piss him off. I see all across the globe, you see those who call themselves world leaders. What leaders? Somebody owns the world. You are not the boss. You are a servant. At best, you are a caretaker. Money, wealth, power, riches. They don't rule the world. They don't own the world. The earth is the Lord's. When you see somebody talk the way like Nancy Pelosi speaks, you see someone who is going to get a reminder from God. Surely go and mark it. You say, I said so. I'm an apostle of the Most High God. Pelosi will get a reminder. Don't forget, if God has to remind you, then something really, really bad has to happen. There are only exceptional cases when he reminds. No, something bad happens. Even for the ones he reminds, he had to remind before he called them. Something bad happened. Paul was blind for how many days? Saul of Tarsus, when God reminded him who was in charge, he was blind for days without food. He suffered. Okay, that's not enough. John's Gospel. Bible says at the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word is established. The earth is the Lord's. I want you to hear the apostle this morning and hear me very loud and clear. Leaders in nation parade themselves. Come to Nigeria and see these Mieti Allah people, see these Fulani people. See the government in Nigeria, see the current Buhari's administration. Sometimes they talk and they play God. Let them go and read Colossians 1. You are nothing before him, without him. If he says your time is up, it's up. Mere mortals cannot brag before the immortal one. The earth is the Lord's. He is Yahweh. He is Jehovah. In the beginning, John's Gospel, chapter 1, verse 1 to 5. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him. Did you see that? So it's referring to Jesus now. All things were made by him. All things were made by him, including your democracy. It was made by him. All things, because he made the man who created democracy. All things. The brain with which you used to start democracy or communism, he gave it to you. You belong to him. You are his. Whatever position, whatever title, whatever position of influence we occupy, know this and know it carefully. You are just a caretaker, including servants of God. Some of us get to a point and arrogance gets into us and we play God. He will simply set you aside and use use another. After all, he showed to us that if a prophet becomes so depraved, a donkey will speak. Jesus looked at the Pharisees. He said, you can't hold me to ransom. I am Elohim. That means the one who creates. These very stones now will cry out. None of us can hold God to ransom. When people say they own this country, I pity them. It is a direct affront and insult to the Lord, Yahweh, Jehovah. When he sees too much arrogance, he reminds. And like we have said, if God has to remind you, bad things happen. I mean, really, really bad things happen. Don't allow the Most High remind you who is in charge. It's like a tenant who keep showing arrogance to the landlord. One day he will have to remind that tenant who owns the house. It's called quick notice. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness katalabano it not. That's the Greek word for comprehended it not. It is katalambano. 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 It means the darkness could not take control of it. The darkness could not seize it. The darkness could not override it. It didn't say will not. It said could not, cannot. He is that light that no darkness can overshadow. So what's your worry as a believer? What's our fear? What are our fears? He said that light is shining and darkness can never katalambano it. It can't seize upon it. It can't overtake it. It can't take control of it. You cannot plot a coup against God successfully. Ask Satan, the former Lucifer. Ask him. But if you have to look for him to ask him, then it means you have to end up in hellfire. Fortunately, he's not there now. He will join you much later. You see, that's the sad part. All those who follow him appear in a destination where they can't find him because his time is not yet. But they go ahead of him. Let me give us an example to a power broker. Pharaoh. Egypt was the most powerful country in the known world then. Military, political, monarchical, whatever. Egypt was the United States of America. It was the clear world superpower. Then Egypt had problem with God's protected ones. God came quietly. You see the beauty about God. It's not braggadocious. It was a simple appeal. You know, I have learned from experience when God wants to do devastating things, he starts by appealing. He comes as the peacemaker. Those who reject the peaceful offer of God ends up ends up in pieces. It's either you take his peace offer or you turn to pieces. You are torn to pieces. If you read the entire Exodus chapter 9, chapter 10, you will get the story. But there's a verse I want you to see. That's Exodus chapter 9, verse 29. It was a reminder to the king of Egypt, Pharaoh. And Moses said unto him, as soon as I am gone out of the city, I will spread abroad my hands unto the Lord. You see instruction. God didn't tell Moses, spread your hands when you leave the palace. He said, leave the city completely. And the thunder shall cease, neither shall there be any more hail. The next statement, that thou mayest know how that the Lord, the earth, is the Lord's. He reminded Pharaoh once, twice, in fact, 10 times. Every single reminder destroyed Egypt until the very future of Pharaoh was lost. Don't let God remind you who is in charge. God reminders letters are not always pleasant. If you think that's not serious enough, ask King Nebuchadnezzar, who ate grass like oxen for 7 years. Ask him. Ask him. Or go and ask Herod in Acts of the Apostles chapter 12, who before his very guests was eaten up by worms. Before his guests. Or go and ask Haman, who ended up being hanged in the gallows he prepared for Mordecai in the book of Esther. You see some world powers, they call themselves United Nations, they call themselves World Health Organizations, One World Government, New World Order. You are nothing but caretaker. You people are nobodies. The only authority you have was derived from the Lord, Yahweh. If you forget it, he will remind you. America is crashing and America is going to fall. They forgot who established them. They will get his reminder. The individuals like Nancy Pelosi that I've mentioned before, she will get a letter of reminder. Certainly this year. America as a nation will get her letter of reminder too. Sometimes it takes God to remind people before they become wise. As in the case of Nebuchadnezzar, he suddenly grew and became wise. Pharaoh didn't learn on time. He had to lose his future hair. He lost his military power. He lost his diplomats, his advisors. He lost his senators. He lost everything. Before it dawned on him, he wasn't really as powerful as he thought he was. Mr. Billionaire, Mr. President, Mr. Military Dictator, Mr. Chancellor, you are as powerful as the Most High allows you to be. The day, I repeat, the day you forgot who gave you life, he will remind you. Everyone he has reminded. You have seen Pharaoh. He reminded Pharaoh. And Egypt crashed and has never recovered again till date. God's reminder carries a lifetime consequences. God's reminder carries a lifetime consequences. It carries lifetime consequences, rather. In the book of Daniel, chapter 4, verse 24 to 37, I want you to have a clear picture. I gave several examples of power brokers who thought they were something and forgot who put them there. Don't forget Colossians 1 we read. He said, all things were created by him and for him. And in him all things consist. There can be no you without him. So the day you piss him off, he will remind you that you are dust. Nothing but dust. Herod played God. He stretched forth his hand. He killed God's protected. He thought he was the one. But Jesus already gave the disciples a blessing. James and John. He said, don't worry. The cup that I drink, you will drink from it. That means they will be killed. They will be martyred. So Herod thought he was the one. He stretched forth his hand. He killed. But when he stretched forth his hand towards Peter, that was against God's program. An angel showed up and set him free. He left that place and began to brag. And an angel smote him before his guest with his royal apparel. In his royal apparel, worms started eating him up alive before his guest. Nothing can be as demeaning as that, because he forgot. If he didn't have life, he couldn't be Herod. If you don't have life, you can't be a politician. If you don't have life, you can't be a governor. You can't be a president. You can't be anything you are right now. The Bible said clearly in John's Gospel 1, in him was life. And that life became the light of man. Talk not so arrogantly. Go and ask Hannah in 1 Samuel 2. He raised the poor from the dunghill and set them among princes. He is God all by himself. He's called the self-existing one. Darkness can never catalabano the shining light. We are not just light. We are shining light. You can be light and be in off state. No, we are shining. See what happened to Nebuchadnezzar, the most powerful world leader in his day too. Why is it that these political leaders, they keep falling victim? Look at Egypt, the most powerful, brought him down with a reminder. Nebuchadnezzar, he brought him down. Herod, he brought him down. Haman, he brought him down. Haman was promoted and he thought it was him. Then he stretched forth his hand against God's protected. And then God had to remind him. Now you understand why he said, why are you bothering yourself? Be still. So that you can know that I'm God. The entire earth is like a single building before God. He knows all the tenants, he owns the property, and he knows what to do. The earth is so big before you, not before the Almighty. It is his property, and he has rules and regulations. You see these Fulani killer headsmen that have spilled blood, their blood shall be spilled. There is a divine spiritual principle. There can only be peace in the land when the blood of the one who spilled blood is spilled, not the blood that was spilled. Not the one's blood that was spilled. It is the spiller's blood that cleanses the land. How is it going to happen? That's none of your business. There are spiritual principles. So look at the way people say they own the country. You own nothing. Like I said, when you hear somebody like Nancy Pelosi talk, you have seen a person who will get God's reminder. And the more arrogant they are, the more pathetic their fall is. This is the interpretation, O king. This is Daniel trying to employ the king, to entreat the king, to say, "Hear, O king, listen to me. There is an impending judgment against you. You can avert it." Like I said, every time the Most High wants to do something devastating, he first reaches out. He calls a truce. Symbolically, I did that to a few persons recently. What next is always horrifying. True men of God are dangerous. God calls a truce first. Pharaoh, let's settle. Now, Nebuchadnezzar, please see the impending judgment. There is problem, but you can avert it, O king. He said, "Thank you, Daniel. You are my friend I've had." 12 months pass. I'm sure after the first month, second month, like, "Oh, well, it's okay." It's one of those things. It's not every time he can get it right anyway. Then the 12th month, he was in his palace. See what happened. This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High. Did you see that? "Which is come upon my lord the king, that they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. And they shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and they shall wet thee with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over thee, till thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will." Christians in Nigeria should listen. And the Fulanis in the country should listen. The country does not belong to you. Gather all the Fulanis from Niger, from across Africa, from whatever. He said, "Let them gather, they shall be scattered." The country does not belong to you. You can never have it. "And whereas they commanded to leave the stump of the tree roots, thy kingdom shall be sure upon thee, after that thou shalt have known that the heavens do rule." Did you see that? "Wherefore, O king, let my counsel be acceptable unto thee. I take God, beg you, sheathe your sword, repent, turn a new leaf, and break off thy sins by righteousness, and thy iniquities by showing mercy to the poor, if it may be a lengthening of thy tranquility." Verse 28, "All these came upon the king Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, he walked in the palace of the kingdom of Babylon. The king spake." Do you know Babylon is present Iran? "The king spake and said, Is not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty?" 31, "While the word was in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken, the kingdom is departed from thee, and they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and 7 times shall pass over thee, until thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. The same hour was the thing fulfilled upon Nebuchadnezzar, and he was driven from men, and did eat grass as oxen. And his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hairs were grown like eagles' feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. And at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up my eyes unto heaven, and my understanding returned unto me. And I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. And all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. Did you hear that? This was the most powerful man in his days. In his day. He went through the school of God's reminder. And he doeth according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And none can stay his hand or say unto him, what doest thou? Did you hear that? The understanding Nebuchadnezzar gave, many of us have been born again for 15, 10, 20 years. We don't have it. Look at what he said. He said, none can stay his hand. Nobody can postpone your miracle by a moment. That's what King Nebuchadnezzar said. Nobody alters his schedule. Nobody can change his program. This is Nebuchadnezzar, a hidden king. Knows more about the Most High than many Christians today. But it took him going through the school of God's reminder. He said in heaven, he commands the army. On earth, he is in charge. Nobody can stay his hand. You can't alter his calendar. You can stop him. He is unstoppable. At the same time, my reason returned unto me. You know, they say power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. When God allows wealth, power, whether spiritual, political, to get into people's hands, he wants to see your response. If you become pass with him, you now rub shoulders with him, then you go down. And he watches to see how you treat the poor, the vulnerable, those who can't defend themselves. Till date, God doesn't joke with that thing. When you use your position of influence to oppress people, destroy them, you have crossed the red line. A reminder letter is coming to you. Nations are getting reminder letters. Nigeria is going to get a reminder letter. America is going to get a reminder letter. Watch these people who have gotten to a point where they think there is nobody. No wonder the Bible says it is the fool that has said there is no God. That's the reason we have LGBT today. They are God's reject. What they need is not our mercy. What they need is deliverance. They don't need our sympathy. They need deliverance. At the same time, my reason returned unto me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my honor and brightness returned unto me, and my counselors and my lords sought unto me, and I was established in my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added unto me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all whose works are truth, and his ways judgment. And those that walk in pride he is able to abase, because he was one. Those who walk in pride he's able to abase, he brings them down. God so dealt with Pharaoh. He looked in front of him, there was no future. He looked where he was, his present, he was alone. He looked behind him, the past was gone. He reduced him to who he was without him. You are nothing without the Most High. Stop being pompous, stop being arrogant. A lot of persons are going to get God's reminder later this year across the globe. You see this COVID-19 thing, the vaccine, people are going to get later of reminder. You see how Nebuchadnezzar, like I said a while ago, suddenly became wise. He had wisdom. Now suddenly he truly now knew, he now truly know who is in charge. It's the Most High. Let's not allow God to remind us. Bad things happen when you remind anyone, group, nations, country, organizations who is in charge. Psalm 2 verse 1 to 5. Why do the heathen rage? Sometimes people just rage because they think they can, because they believe they have the capacity, the power, the influence to rage. They just rage. But unfortunately, sometimes they rage against the wrong set. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing, as is being done in America today? The kings of the earth, did you see that, set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord, against Yahweh, and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. Then shall he speak unto them in his wrath and vex them in his sore displeasure. You don't want to see the anger of God. You don't want to see it. You don't want to see his wrath unleashed against you or anyone you know for that matter. Last scripture today. The earth is the Lord's. That's the sermon title. It's a reminder. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are, please know who is in charge. If you forget that, you're going to get a reminder later. Bad things happen when God reminds people that he is the one in charge. Isaiah 54 verse 16 to 17. Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work, and I have created the waster to destroy. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. You can mess with any other person. Don't mess with those who are classified as the servants of the Lord. When you engage God's protected in battle, your weapons will only do as they are told, not as you wish. That's why he said, you see, those instruments, I give them the capacity. When you use them against my protected, it won't answer. Then I will turn around that same instrument, you will use it to destroy yourselves. The earth is the Lord's. Doesn't belong to United Nations. Doesn't belong to China. Doesn't belong to United States of America either. Nigeria does not belong to the Fulanis. The earth, there's only one owner. He is the Lord's. He said the fullness and everyone, the world, the inhabitants, they all belong to him. Colossians 1 makes it very clear. whether it be thrones, whether it be powers, whether it be dominion, whether it be principality, you are his. Like I said, your ass is his. You belong to him. If you forget that, then he has to remind you. Trust me, you don't want a reminder letter from the Most High. Usually he reminds when he's pissed off. Who can battle with the Lord? Why believers bothered? Nebuchadnezzar know much more than many of us. He said nobody can stay his hand. That thing will come when he says it will come. Let's trust him and celebrate him. How can a human being live successfully in the forest with animals for 7 years and not get killed? That was a miracle in itself. There is nothing this God has not done. People still don't learn. Let's rise up on our feet. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof.